Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Tearing It Up podcast. We have just been cruising along the last month. So much going on in September. As I'm recording today, I'm still very much in the midst of it. But as you're hearing it, you'll probably have heard some of the recaps of the month. We have got a great conversation coming your way today. We will definitely be talking some bikes, some outdoor industry stuff, and just following along this journey that you're all used to hearing is not a straight path. And I love talking to people and sharing their stories of how they've gotten from A to Z, back to B, whatever it is. So today, our guest, Carolyne Whelan, will have a great story for us. And I think even too, some nuggets of information that you can take into your personal life. Again, you don't always have to be like a business-minded entrepreneur type to learn from the amazing women we have on this show. I take so much just personally from like their stories and daily routines or anything they've got. And we had a great intro call that I wish we were just recording at that moment. So I'm excited that we get to talk today. So Carolyne has a business called Forward Motion Riding, and I'm going to let her start to tell the story anyway of like her path to get to where she is today. But first off, Carolyne, I love to ask where you are in the world today as we are recording.
Right now, I am in Missoula, Montana. I just got home the other day, so I feel like my consciousness finally arrived this morning with some jet lag after a bike trip down the California coast. But now fully present in Missoula and happy to be here.
I love it. I had visited Missoula last October for Outdoor Media Summit.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to spend like a whole lot of time around there. I was very much like kind of in the summit. I made a couple stops along the way, but I want to go back so bad and explore some more there. It's so beautiful there. Are you from Montana?
No, I've moved around quite a bit. I'm actually from the Boston area, just south of Boston, and then have lived in New Mexico twice, Pittsburgh twice, Boston again, and New York City, and kind of vagabond for a while at different stages. So, when I arrived in Missoula, I was already planning on moving elsewhere and maybe to New Mexico for the third time, or somewhere else. And my partner was like, "Have you considered just loving the place where you are and considering making like a home in a place that wants you to feel at home?" And I was like, I actually don't think that I've considered that feeling before, which is very embarrassing and humbling to realize that with just, like, a quick sentence, it really shifted my perspective of where I was located and the community that I was building and the support that I was feeling and the opportunities that were available, and the opportunities that I could also present in my community as far as, like, volunteering and just being there for people, and, uh it really helped me, like, shoot some roots into the ground, and it feels really fantastic to be here.
I wouldn't say it's like embarrassing at all, in that stage of life. First of all, that in itself sets the the stage for the path, the windy path, right? Moving around here to there
Mhm.
and whatnot. But I think that some of us go through those stages of we wanting to travel or see different places and that you sometimes it does take someone telling you something like that to really think about like, well, I hadn't really considered that because maybe on your mind was like, I want to see everything. I want to do everything, right? And then you're like,
Mhm.
oh, I guess I could consider what it might be like to stay in one place for a little bit of time. I feel like I have a similar story. I didn't move around quite as much, well, maybe, but anyway, it was just like it hit me like, "Oh, yeah, I guess it wouldn't be so bad to, like, stay in one place longer than 3 to 6 months and, or even longer than a year and see what happens and straight start to try and build, like, a community again," because I came from a childhood, I guess. I had such a strong community, I had so many friends that I had that were in my life for so, so long that I think I was craving the opposite, I guess, of maybe like, "Alright, I know I have all this, like, these roots and everything at home, so now I'm just out there spreading them." But it's it did feel pretty good to have that. So, yeah, what would it be like to have it again? But
Yeah, yeah, and, the different places that I've moved from, there was kind of a at least at first, there was a reason that I moved from the Boston area to New Mexico because it was the most different environment that I could imagine for myself, and also there was this, like, punk band that I heard that came to my little, like, beach town and was like, "I like you. I live where you are because this is the music that you all are playing, that's great." But, I wanted something that really took me out of my environment, and then living in this small town in New Mexico, uh, I f really wanted to feel what it was like to feel, what's the term? Not quite invisible, but kind of, where I had built such a tight-knit community of people who really cared about me, and at that stage in my life, I was going through a whole lot and felt like, uh, I didn't I don't know if I didn't deserve that kind of community. I was embarrassed that people cared about me, and there was a lot going on in my life at the time that moving to a place where I could just kinda be anonymous felt really great, so I moved to New York City, and turns out that that feeling is not awesome for me, feeling completely anonymous and like you can't necessarily trust your friendships, and that there's this sense that whatever you're doing, there's probably something better to do, and so why bother doing anything?
mm.
Which was, like, the feeling in my social circle of some of them at the time, and there's been, like, different transgressions and motivations around moving for that, so I think that being somebody who's such an overthinker, having the very honest and simple question of and when I moved out here, I was kind of wanting to prove to myself again for various reasons that, I could make friends and build community and get back to that feeling from when I moved to New Mexico, and then I, like, did that and was like, "Okay, great. Job done. Time to move." And so that, like, simple question of, like, m m have you thought of just, like, enjoying that, the fruits of your labor of building community? It was like, oh, as an overthinker, sometimes the simplest questions really escape us.
Yeah. Oh, I can relate to that for sure, and I think, I bring this up a lot. We do have a majority of women listeners, and so I don't feel like I always have to, like, I guess, put this disclaimer, but I think as women, a lot
Mhm.
of us are overthinkers, overanalyzers, and that's such a good point that these simple questions can just, like, go right out the window, or again, we're just, like, complicating the answer. It's like, okay, come
Yes.
back to that with a blank mind and think, like, it really could be a, like, simple answer and just trial and error. I also like the bit you mentioned about, kind of wanting to maybe be somewhere where you felt, like, anonymous, and it turns out it wasn't for you. It sounds like throughout this time, you've learned so much about yourself, and, again,
Mhm.
without having those experiences, you wouldn't know. Had you had, like, settled down in one place for too long, you'd still have that itch probably to, like, "Okay, I wanna go somewhere else and somewhere else." So it sounds like you got all that out, figured some things out, and were able to, like, take these steps into longer phases in places. What I love to do for that, like, I wanna feel anonymous type thing is I really fucking love, like, going out to dinner alone when I'm somewhere new. So when I travel for whatever reason by myself, I love going to a bar or restaurant for dinner and just, like, people watching and
Ah,
sitting, and I don't, not
yes.
to sound like I'm a total introvert or unfriendly or anything, but I really, like, hope that people don't really talk to me because
Uh-huh.
'cause I'm like, "No, I want to, like, just, watch and observe," and then I do still have the feeling sometimes if it is a guy 'cause, we love or not women hating men club around here or anything, but the first thought always is, like, "Oh god, what's this man gonna say to me?" Like, I is it gonna be able to be just a friendly conversation and just, like,
Right.
shooting the shit, or am I gonna have to, like, fend him off with like, "Okay, like, I'm done talking, I have to go, my boyfriend or something's calling," whatever, just, like, put out the vibes of, like, I don't wanna go there. That happened one time. I text my mom, and this was kinda recently, well, I guess it was last year, but I had text my mom, like, "Please call me right now because I cannot get out of
Oh,
this
no.
conversation, and, like, the only thing really I can do to get out of this is, like, move bar stools." But I just ordered my food, so I don't wanna awkwardly in this place that's a small town and probably a lot of local people there, move to the other
Mhm.
end of the bar and have everyone think I'm just, like, this bitch from Tahoe who,
Uh,
like, thinks I'm better than everybody or something. It's like, no, I just, like, this guy's, like, 10 sheets to the wind. It's 5 p.m. Like, I don't wanna be bothered. Like, so, yeah, I was like, "Mom, call me, get me out of this." I'm like, "Oh, I gotta step outside and have this conversation while I wait for my food to come."
I I want to think that in situations like that, where it is a small town and there is somebody who is that intoxicated and bothering, you know, a young lady, quote unquote, somebody that is not their kin, that they've probably also seen that happen enough, and that
Mhm.
if you're like, uh like, one time when I was in high school, I went to an Eddie Izzard show, and my friend and I, we were probably, like, we were tweens, really, like 13, 14, young teenagers, and we dressed up as drag queens because we're gonna see Eddie Izzard, and afterwards went to this late night diner and started getting picked up by these guys, and again, we were children,
Yeah.
as prostitutes, and we were, ill equipped to handle a situation, and we're just like in fear, not sure what to do. And then finally, like the waitresses came over, and we like didn't know because it was again like a diner. They were clearly regulars, and then like they saw what was going on, and then just kind of like, read them the riot act and got them away from us, and then everybody in the bar was like, "Quit being creeps, why are you creeps to everybody?" And it was like, "Right,
Calling him
okay, because
out.
it's not us, it's you, and you are
Yeah.
like this to, like, everybody who comes in because you don't understand the world," or whatever,
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, it's wild being out there alone again, especially as, like, as a woman. I haven't had a lot of fear really or anything, but there are things that we think about that it's interesting that you don't, that our male counterparts don't always think about when traveling
Yeah.
solo or even just the day to day. But, we digress a bit. I'm sure others can relate to this story,
Yeah.
but back to, like, your background,
Mhm.
everything. Um I love everything that what we've talked about that you're doing, that what you've built, the path you've come from, like working for big like magazines or editorials and whatnot, and then kind of creating your own thing. And you mentioned too when we first started our conversation, like that you were kind of burned a little bit in this. And I think a lot of us have been in those situations too, and that can be the catalyst to just doing our own thing or again, figuring out exactly where we want to go. But will you tell us a little bit about your like kind of entry into the outdoor industry or cycling specifically, wherever it plays into your life most relevantly, like where the riding career came from, if that's where it all started?
Yeah, I think that I am a bit cursed by finding what I love so early on that it hasn't given me the opportunity to build like any other skills. But it's also been really lovely that I've been a writer and a storyteller and a poet since before I could actually write. And I've also been into bicycles since before I got my training wheels off and was just one of those kids that never grew out of it. I did have like an inline skate phase and a skateboarding phase, but for the most part, it's just been me and bikes and riding for my whole life. And I got a job at the local bike shop in Santa Fe because I was hanging out there all the time working on my own bike and buying parts, and in high school, I learned how to work on my own bike, so I would hang out in this bike shop once I moved to New Mexico, and they were like, "Do you wanna just have a job here instead of loitering all the time? And we'll teach you how to actually work on your bike." And that was, one of the worst best things to ever happen because I got really involved in the cycling world, seeing the different facets and ways to be a cyclist. And that's when I first saw Dirt Rag magazine that we were selling on the newsstand at the time. And when I had kind of a mental breakdown following some trauma at age 20, I got into bicycle touring because I just needed to go. And not having any money and not having any like car or anything, then the way to go would be by bicycle. And so I just created in my mind, like, the concept of a bike tour the way that I created in my mind the concept of a zine when I was 12 that I didn't it already existed, but not for me. And so that's kind of like the working at that first bike shop, Rob and Charlie's, I think really set the foundation, seeing dirt rag and seeing that mountain biking didn't have to be this super, uh unfun, competitive, like, a sporty thing that it could be getting weird in the woods and, like, hanging out with your friends, and that's all I wanted to do, just hang out in the woods with my friends and be weird, and so, fast forward, life kind of hopscotches on itself, and I am doing more writing, go to grad school, figure out my life, end up at Dirt Rag as the web editor, and then quickly, within like a few months, end up as the editor in chief. And that was at kind of the tail end of that really iconic publications timeline. So I was actually just on a bike tour with the editor that I took over from, and there's been a lot of heartbreak for both of us around that magazine, and I realized in talking with him again that, uh I really am happy that even though I came at a time that people were kind of at their last straw as far as, like, my colleagues and coworkers there, but I got to be a part of it. This magazine that I picked up when I was, 18, 17 years old, that, like, here I was making it. My name was in it. I was able to shape the stories that were in it, and that's, like, so freaking cool, you know? Like, I got it. It happened. I made it. And, yeah, so that I think was, like, the big highlight, and then from there, after Dirt Rag folded, going to Adventure Cyclist, and that was same kinda thing, that taking over at a time when the organization was, uh, going through a lot of shifts and having a hard time finding its path, and taking that information and having the opportunity to be like, "Alright, well, you're cutting the magazine from 9 issues to 6 issues. You're cutting the budget by $100,000 a year. My staff of 2 people is super talented and motivated, so do I, like, break their spirits and tell them to just work less, or do I take a chance and we all redesign completely and, like, reimagine this magazine for what we want it to be now that it's gonna look different? We really make it look different." And so we did a total redesign and rebrand, and it wasn't necessarily enough for the organization to see our vision, but it we were able to all step away knowing that we made something really special and feeling proud of the work that we did versus feeling like it just kind of puttered out, which was the other opportunity that we would have.
It is so hard in the moment sometimes to realize where you're at and how far you've come, and you really do have to, unfortunately, sometimes, like, it's the after that you have to look back and see about,
Mhm.
like, how far you've come, and it was actually this morning in a message to a friend of mine where this came up, that it's like, you just go through those hard days in the middle of it, and you really have to force yourself to, like, look at the starting point to now. I mean, I have to do that all the time in this current moment, I feel like I can see it, but it's like in 2 weeks when things slow down again, I know that mentally I'm gonna have to force myself like, "Okay, things might be slow right now, but look at what has happened in the last, like, month or 2," or things like that. Like, has do you feel like that has been hard for you to do throughout life of, like, in the middle of things, kinda realize the good and growth around you?
Uh, oh yeah, for sure. It I think that I am able to see it when I force myself to see it.
Mhm.
And reminding yourself to force yourself to do something is like, if I'm depressed, forcing myself to put on the specials and dance around my living room. Like, that's not, I want to listen to Townes Van Zandt and melt into my bed.
Yeah.
And, like, but that's not the good thing. The good thing
Mhm.
is to like get moving and change perspective and change energy flow inside my body. And it's the same thing with, taking that moment, forcing ourselves to take a bigger look of, okay, things are slow or not even slow. Sometimes things are really hectic and
Mhm.
that feels really bad, or they're hectic in the ways that we don't want them to be. But like when things aren't feeling like they're clicking and aligning, that can create tension, and the least uh the most counterintuitive and most helpful thing is to just shift what our expectations are versus
Mhm.
trying to shift our reality. And in shifting our expectations, that can allow the reality to kind of like fit in better to what we want with like small changes, but just being like, I don't like it. Like, like that doesn't, there's no like action with that, or things being slow. Taking that breath and saying, okay, well, I had this like huge moment of ex export,
Mhm.
getting all of these things done, or input, getting all of this like opportunity coming into me. It can't all be input, it can't all be output. So like this is the moment that is like the other part of that breath of life. And realizing that allows us, I think, just to literally breathe and be like, all right, like trust, not just trust the process, but trust our own intellect and ability and resilience and capacity to um figure shit out.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Trust in yourself. Like, it can be
Mhm.
very hard, especially because I think that in certain situations, especially in terms of, like, growing a business, it can be very hard to really trust that, like, instinct or gut of, "Should I do this or shouldn't I? Does it align this or that?" Because top of mind is like growth and trying to do everything to get to this
Mhm.
next stage. And I absolutely love your wording there of shifting expectations instead of like what might first come to mind is like lowering
Right.
expectations. I feel like saying lowering your expectations has a negative connotation. And sometimes people say that to you when they think that you are trying too much, too hard, and um, don't expect that you're gonna get it or something, so they're like, "Hey, lower
Mhm.
your expectations because, like, they're way too high and you're not gonna reach that," or something, and thus that puts you down, but if it's or so then when you yourself are thinking like, "I need to lower my expectations," it feels like you are, again, just, like, lowering yourself in that you're now not believing in yourself, but it's really just shifting them to really look at maybe not even realities, but just think about your capacity. What's happening to you? Like, do you have enough within you right now to reach those high, high goals and bars and standards that you've set? Um, you have to really do a like look around your whole life and just say, like, okay, you know what? Right now, actually, that's a really great goal, and I want to have high expectations, but can I really do that right now? Do I need to allow myself some time here or there and just, yeah, shift them a little bit? Because those small steps are they just make you feel so good when you see yourself reaching them. We've talked about this on
Mhm.
the podcast. I've talked about it in my personal training business as well of, like, when we set these huge audacious goals, but we don't have little mini goals we're hitting along the way, it can feel like that goal, we just never, ever, ever get closer to it, and I am a list person. I mean, on both sides of me right now, I have 2 different notebooks with
Amazing.
lists going, that I just have to write it down. I have a whiteboard to my side with sticky notes all over it. When I can cross one off, and even if it's like my digital Asana too, I'm like, it feels so good to see one more thing off the list. So I've personally been working on even just in that, like, smaller lists to check those off and get that little kinda serotonin hit or something.
Yeah, absolutely, and, I think in the times that I've heard to lower my expectations, which was, when I worked at Dirt Rag and at Adventure Cyclist, it wasn't my expectations that needed to be lowered. It was, uh, to a degree, the people saying that's expectations of what I was capable that needed to be raised, and with that would have come the support or the structure or whatever it is, and so I feel like, you know, it's it's in reevaluation of what the circumstance is and where we are aligned, and so that's why it's really like a shift of perspective that, okay, this is like the goal, this is the vision. Does it align with the reality that I have with what I would need to get there? Maybe my expectation actually needs to be a lot higher. And so it's not involving these things that I would need to get there. It involves these other things over here that are actually gonna like, if I'm crawling a ladder and it only has 5 rungs on it, then I'm not gonna be able to get to my roof. And so if I'm only able to get up to that point and I'm looking to like where to find the water that's coming into the house, then I'm gonna just be like really frustrated and feeling like I'm a failure of a contractor. But if I can take that step back and say, okay, well, the problem is really up there. This ladder isn't going to help me. Let me find a better way to address this problem. Then suddenly you're like actually getting to the thing that you want to be getting to.
With reevaluating, shifting expectations, all of that. I mean, I guess I'm wondering, were you told that a lot, like, in what you were doing, and is that where maybe some of the desire to branch out on your own stemmed from? Or tell us a little bit about how and when you decided that it was time to just kind of move on, start your own thing, and get into the freelance world of things.
Yeah, oh yeah, I didn't I guess in, like, my trajectory, I was trying to be expedient, and I cut out a whole lot of other steps in there, including where I am right now, but,
It's
I'm
okay.
really great at marketing myself, so, yeah, I think that, like, on my desk for a long time, I had 2 Post-it notes, one that said, "Say the damn thing," and another that said, "Try being brave, maybe." And I had thought of myself as not like a not always as brave as I wanted to be, especially in, like, trusting in myself and my projects, and so whenever I would get that feeling of, like, am I, like, on the right track? Because my own training is not in publishing or in I studied publishing in grad school, but it was different from journalism school, and, same thing with, like, the editing. It's not, I don't have, like, a copy editing background. It's all stuff that I've learned through, like, literary writing, and so you're told these things. I was told these things of what I was good at and bad at, what I should and shouldn't be doing. I have different, like, quote unquote, learning disabilities that make my processing a lot different from other people. And having all of that information and that self doubt, it had in the past, I think, caused me to just assume that the reason that I wasn't getting opportunities or wasn't making the uh making it along the path that I had seen as a possibility for myself because I wasn't good enough or adequate or talented, or whatever. Uh, and so, like, just being brave allowed me to really trust in a lot of my real vision, and only, to the point of being able to see what that is, actually, and not just, like, an external expectation of what I was capable or not capable of. And so once you can be internally a bit brave and see a future that aligns with what you actually wanna do and you're capable of, it really highlights when other people who are naysayers are actually acting in fear,
Mm, mhm,
and that it's not about you, it's about them and what they either how they either perceive you and where your skills are and how that might impact them, which has nothing to do with you, that has something to do with their perception of you, or it has to do with their imagining of their own ability and their ability to either, like, keep up or align or support or whatever it is. And so, like, being able to see that has been really, uh, evolutionary and imagining the future that I want and seeing where I've found the most joy and satisfaction and where my skills have been the most utilized. And I've been a writer for a really, like I said, all my life. And uh, I've been in the outdoors world for all my life, basically. And even though I didn't grow up in like a camping family and stuff, and so a lot of my like outdoor stuff was just kind of like feral child syndrome. But it having, like, those two things and then coming into the world of magazine publishing and working with these writers and getting the opportunity to help them tell their stories and finding the ways that my publications were, don't have a big budget, aren't able to pay people what I would think that they were worth as also a freelance writer, then being like, "Well, alright, where can I fill that gap to make them still wanna work with us? I can fill that gap by giving them the like, literary treatment of their stories, teaching them what the story is that they're really trying to say. If you go on a vacation, uh it changes you potentially, if it's like a bike backpacking or bike packing or kayaking, like, if you're doing something that is really impactful and you wanna tell people about it, maybe it's just bragging, but it's probably because there was something that, like, really changed inside you, and so
mhm.
helping people identify that to tell that story through the adventure versus the other way around, like, I love that, and I love the feeling of somebody else seeing what their own brain is capable of, maybe because you know, that's, like, a lot of, like, personal work that I've done for
Yeah.
myself, but, and so being going back to, like, the freelancing world and writing for other publications and having to pitch, and pitching is just kind of like applying for a job every time you get an idea, and it's can be really exhausting, and, having been a writer for so long is like, I have these stories that I just wanna tell, and I don't want to sell them,
Mhm.
and I th I'm just kind of in that, like, thinking about the input and output range that, like, that's kind of shifted for me, and so where I feel like my skills are most aligned if I'm allowing myself to be a little bit brave to think outside of this path that I had been previously laying for myself as a writer. I think that I'm best aligned as somebody who can help other writers or people who don't yet see themselves as a writer but have a real hell of a story inside them.
Yeah.
And so that's how, and honestly, it kind of came from people just asking me, seeing, like, once I resigned from adventure cycling, getting a few emails saying, "I saw what you did at the magazine, can you help me?" And being brave enough to say yes a few times and then being like, "What if I, like, put it out there that I can do this, and, like, let's see what that looks like to put it out there. How does one do that, especially as a shy introvert with a lot of, not self-esteem issues, but, imposter syndrome and things
Yeah, there
like
you
that.
go.
Like, how do you talk about yourself in a way that highlights the things that you've proven to yourself that you can do, but also being, like, humble
Mhm.
and understanding that you're just one part of this, like, massive, human ecosystem has been, like, the biggest challenge, but allowing that to just, like, swimming around in that and allowing it to feel awkward and embracing it a little bit has been very, very interesting. So, I don't know if I answered your question. I think I went on a bit of a tangent, but,
I love it though.
yeah.
There's again just that's why I like letting people sometimes just kind of flow because there's so many like nuggets to pull out of it and ways that people can resonate, especially well, one, like pitching. Oh my god, that's again like
Yeah.
for any business related folks, especially in the kind of creative freelance world. That's been an interesting journey that I have more recently like entered
Mhm.
into. It's been something I think I've been putting off for a very long time because the thought of it is very just overwhelming. Like it's exhausting. Like I said, it's like applying for a job every time and just to constantly have to put
Absolutely.
yourself out there as a person who, has imposter syndrome moments or when you have to do it so often, it just gets hard. You get tired of selling yourself. And I feel like everything I've done in the last, I don't know, since 2018, when I really started that's when I started training to be a personal trainer and started going down that route. And yeah, I worked for gyms doing group classes, but I still had to get one-on-one clients. Sometimes they came through the gym. But yeah, the last 6 years, I've done a few different things, and everything that I've done on my own has been more service related. And so, in that service related world, like, it is really like selling yourself, and I mean, even for anyone who has, like, a product-based business or something, you're trying to sell that product, which in itself is selling you and your business, but sometimes it can be hard to separate yourself from, like, you and business, and actually in a conversation I just had, recently with Gigi from Nara, so I had a few gals who they've been on the podcast before, and then they were on again as part of a Title IX series that I did about their Pitch Fest, but she mentioned, like, separating yourself or it was her, Tina, I forget. Anyways, the conversation was separating yourself from, like, business, and I think a lot of us need to do that just personally, right? But, like, separating us from whatever identity it is. It doesn't have to be that you run your own business and you're trying to separate yourself from that. It could be from, um, like, being a mother or, like,
Mhm.
having your own true time and self, and so whether it's work, whatever you identify with mostly, you really need to be able to, like, shut that part off, sometimes to do what you need most for yourself. Like, I'm not a mother, so I can't really speak to, like,
I
the
think
like, quote, unquote, like, "turn it off" is not what I mean, but I know I have a lot of friends who are moms, sister-in-law, my mother, where I know that they still need to have their own identity at times and not be worrying about the entire household. I think people can relate that back to their own lives in so many different ways because so often it all gets melded into one and it's hard to separate ourselves and like be this person or that person and can go into so many rabbit holes of identity and like, how to navigate, the overused term of, like, balance where you can be all these people and
Mhm.
things, and so without compartmentalizing, but being able to, like, be these different people really within your one self. Speaking of showing our personality, that goes for our gear too, which makes me think of our sponsor, No Sew Patches. They go beyond repair and are also all about flaring it up with No Sew waterproof patches that make your favorite pieces feel new again or just more you. What I love most is that No Sew gets our relationship with our gear is personal. These are items we've taken on our most epic adventures and created lasting memories in. They're not just fixes, they're like battle scars that keep the story going. They've done collabs with Patagonia, Free People, and artists like Lisa Congdon, so you know the designs are good. If your favorite piece of gear needs a little love or you just want to give it some flair, head to nosopatches.com and use the code FLARINITUP for 15% off. That code will be in the show notes for the times that you tear it up a little too much.
I think it could be also really hard for people like you and me because we have built these businesses around who we are and are doing things based on as trying to be as embodied as possible and incorporating all of these different aspects of ourselves and uh I think our personalities, our like human essence is what uh makes makes us stand out in a sense, for me and my coaching, it's like my approach to how I work with people and the things that I try to bring out of them and my way of helping. And for you, it's your like multifaceted way of being really like engaging and energetic, but also a really great communicator and you have this like really brilliant business sense of, having this production house and then also your personal training background. And all of those are part of like who you are and what you do. Your name is literally in your brand. And so having that and then also being like, but that's just one small aspect of me is like,
Mhm.
okay, yes. And where does that aspect of me end?
Yeah,
It's hard to navigate.
absolutely. And what you do with coaching, I feel like, is kind of helping people navigate this in a way where you are helping people tell their stories when like they have, like you said, stories within them and just need a little bit of guidance in how to get it out on
Mhm.
paper, on the screen, whatever the medium is that they are storytelling. I know you're writing specifically, but I have always, like, wanted to be a writer in a sense, like, not that I mean, yeah, I do wanna write a book someday. I have no fucking idea about what. Still waiting for that. I mean, my grandma told me, like, in my early 20s when I started, like, just hopping around and traveling, she was like, "You have to write a book someday about your
Mhm.
travels and this and that," and I mean, she didn't even get to see a majority of them, but it's always stuck in my mind, and so I've always like, "Alright, well, whatever the book is, it's definitely gonna be dedicated to Grandma Jody for, like, having put this
Love
thought in my
it.
mind so long ago," and I did like to write as a child, um, and whatnot, and now it's just about finding the time because, yeah, I feel like I have so much to say. Obviously, then enter the world of podcasting, and I was like, "This is it for me. This is how I can,
Yeah.
tell my stories," because I also wanna tell other people's stories, but, I still do feel like there is so much within me, so yeah, the idea of because I think what can stop us sometimes is I know it's what stops me or halts me is the asking for help. As cliche as it is, I feel like I want to be able to do everything. So as I'm growing a business and I'm seeing people who, do copy or marketing or social or this or that, I have this crazy feeling when it's like, God, I'd love someone to do that for me. All of a sudden I'm like, but why shouldn't I be able to do it myself? Like, I should be able to do this myself.
Mm.
So when
Mhm.
it comes to something like writing or whatnot, and like, okay, I have this story. I know I can do it, but the thing is, I don't because I just don't set the time aside. Or when things are moving through my brain, I don't have the time to sit down and write. And I might take all these notes or voice dictate. And then I'm like, okay, cool, I've got this hour. And I'm like, well, the same energy or momentum isn't there as it was on
Yep.
my when I was on my bike having all these thoughts. So I'm
Yes.
sure people come to you all the time with these kind of mixed up feelings and wondering I mean, I don't know, maybe being conflicted that with a coach that it's not their story anymore?
It Nobody has said that directly, but
Mhm,
that is very much top of mind for me. And so my goal is to I ask a lot of questions. And a lot of the questions are around why are you mentioning this?
mm,
Or is there Like, what if you, like, mentioned this thing in passing, but this is really intriguing to me. Uh, what if you, like, went on this tangent and talked about this thing for a while? You can always delete it, but, like, let's see what happens, because writing is just play ultimately, especially if you're working on a book, you don't have a deadline in 2 days or 45 minutes. That, like, you can always delete it, and just, like, let's see what happens. Or maybe there's a reason that you didn't want to, uh to talk about it. And so let's really think about that and unpack why you mentioned and I notice this because I do it myself all the time, that I'll drop, like, the most horrible traumatic experience, like it's an apple out of my grocery bag, and then people are like, "But, shouldn't we, like, address it?" I'm like, "No, no, 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 let that just roll down the hill, that's not the story." And people are like, "That's really the story here." And I'm like, "It's so boring though," but and sometimes it is like, I don't wanna get into that because, uh, it's gonna be distracting.
Yeah.
And in that case, then maybe we just delete that entirely. But, it's the when I'm coaching people, it's those kinds of things of helping find out what the story is and tell it and pull out the right details to get that story across, and not tell you how to write a story or tell you what story you should be telling, because that's a really personal
Yeah.
choice,
Mhm.
and I'm not a therapist, and certainly most of your readers aren't gonna be therapists, and, the ones who aren't reading your book to give you a psychoanalysis, so it's really what you talk about and don't talk about, and the way that you talk about it is very, uh, selective to the writer and the the voice. When I was in grad school, after I graduated, I realized that a lot of the work that I had written, I had, like, 2 different portfolios. The one that I wrote for myself, and most of my performances when I would do readings were, like, in bars, and I love performing in bars, in public spaces, in, like, art galleries, places where people weren't expecting to find, poetry, but then were, like, really overcome by it. And what a thrill that is to, like, change a room, but,
Yeah.
uh, I had, like, the portfolio that was that stuff, and then the portfolio of the things that I had written clearly for my professors. And having the opportunity to see that differentiation made me, as a coach, think, I don't want to do that. I don't want somebody to be changing their writing style to match mine, or to be telling a story the way that I would tell it, because I have my own stories to tell. I
Mhm.
don't need to be telling other people's stories for.
I, at the moment, am kind of very, like, business oriented, and we talk to a lot of founders, but again, a lot of our audience is not necessarily business owners or wanting to start their own. And
Mm.
I always love to relate the conversations just back to, yeah, how do we relate this to everyday life? And what I've been thinking about is you've been kind of explaining what you do with and for people, is that all of us have these stories that live inside of us, and getting them out sometimes is just what can be really healing, or, just therapeutic. So it's like, this doesn't have to be, I'm assuming, like, in what you're doing, it's not just for people who are like, I wanna write a book, or I wanna write, a blog, or whatever it is to get their stories out to monetize, but it's like, just to help people get their stories out when you started mentioning, like, poems and things. And so is that true? Is that like, you're just out there to help anyone who needs to get their story just kinda out of them in that therapeutic, like, potentially healing kind of way? And it across the board, I guess, you could be wanting to monetize, or just like, "How do I get these thoughts out?"
Yeah, for sure. Like, I typically, I guess, market myself to people who are looking, who have a goal in mind, just because it can be hard to invest in something, for the sake of investing in it. And so when I'm thinking about, like, who would want to put money towards something, it's people who would probably wanna, like, see a return on their investment, though I would never claim to be able to promise something like that, especially
Yeah.
in today's market world. But especially for my retreats, I had somebody last year who had attended who was not interested in sharing her work even in our like a post writing sharing circle. And that's totally fine. Like, she was there because she loved to write and she wrote for herself. She wanted to gain a deeper understanding of how to express herself more fully for herself. And it's like, that's freaking beautiful. I love that. And you are under like no obligation to hit certain metrics or prove to me that you're doing the work or anything like that. If you're receiving something from our work together, then that's fantastic. And a coaching client that I had, she was one of the few people who weren't like adventure athletes, but she had a hell of a story. And the work that we did, we never even got around to the actual writing because it was just, like, unpacking that she was allowed to tell her story, and, like, we worked together for, like, a few months, and then she was like, "Okay, I think that I need to just, like, go and sit and work on this for myself for a while," and it's like, "That's great." Like, the work that we do is, uh, to kind of break down the expectations that have been put on people, sometimes from like grade school, of what writing should look like, what a writer should look like, what you should be getting out of reading and writing, and allowing people to tap into their subconscious and conscious. And you can monetize that, or even better, you're in a place to not monetize it
Mhm.
and you just want to, like, do it for, personal healing or growth. Or, I worked with somebody who w wanted he saw his grandchildren growing up in a world that he wasn't he was worried that it was gonna shape them in a way that wasn't gonna be positive for them, and so
Yeah.
he wanted to write a book about his bicycle travels across the country and all of the incredible people that he met that are, like, outside of his social sphere, and the things that he learned about them. And this was a book that he wasn't gonna sell, he was gonna give to his grandchildren as just a way to say, like, "People are good, and it's okay to talk to them, and it's okay to be generous because everything." Uh, I mean, sometimes bad things happen and we need to acknowledge that, but in his book and for the most part, like, it there's a balancing that happens, and that it's okay if somebody asks you for something to not be wondering if they're gonna be using it the way that you would, or if they have ulterior motives, or if they're gonna get a one up on you. Just be like, "You need $5 and I have $5? Yes." And that down the road, somebody will say, "Hey, we're giving away free sandwiches." And then, like, like, it all ends up working out. And
Yeah.
I think that, like, getting people to a place where they can write those stories in a way that will be engaging for a reader, or feel therapeutic for themselves to just I think even in just writing that book is probably a lot of healing of remembering all of those instances of the world being good is really helpful for us.
Absolutely. I mean, the talk of journaling is huge, and I feel like it has its, phases, it comes and goes, and again, these days it can maybe it depends on your algorithm, but I see it a lot, and I have a lot of friends who talk about it and journaling, and I go through phases. I'm trying to do more of it because I think even that is just, like, again, getting some of these thoughts out of your head and out on, like, the paper can just really, really help, and investing, like you mentioned, in something like this can make it feel where it's, like, more geared towards people who are trying to make a business out of it, because it's very hard to invest a lot of money in something if it's just for, uh, yourself or, like, fun or whatnot. But then I when you mentioned that, how it can be hard to invest in those things, what I thought about was yoga retreats and how those are, like, for the soul and thousands of dollars, and people do that. And then that in turn reminded me of, like, you do retreats. And I mean, we could keep talking for so long, and I want to, but we do unfortunately have to wrap up. So I definitely want to make sure that you do get to speak a little bit about your retreats and any other services you're offering. So if any listeners are out there who want to inquire more with you or figure out like, yeah, if this is something for them, how they'd be able to find and connect with you.
Yeah, thanks. So my website is forwardmotionwriting.com, and on there you'll find information about my background and my coaching services. I work with, as we were talking about, people who are just looking for help writing their story for themselves, as well as people who are looking to write a book or are in the process of writing a book and are at the final stages or wherever they are. And also people who want to get better on the professional side of being a journalist and talking to editors and how do you pitch and all of that, just like logistical stuff. What does this editor's email mean? Do they hate me? Can be really hard. And so I offer coaching for all of that kind of thing. And I also host retreats every year. By the time this podcast comes out, my second one will be over. And so doors will be freshly open for the third one, which would be really great. And to find out more information on that, it'll just be forwardmotionwriting.com/retreats. And you can see testimonials from the previous ones and information on where the next one will be and what it's about. They shift in sport and location every year, but the overall concept is integrating uh, movement and writing together to help break out of writer's block and the fear of imperfection and bring play into our creative process a little bit. So that's it.
Sounds amazing, and I can't wait to hear about how your recent one went and read all about it and see those things, and like I said, I mean, this has been such a great conversation. I feel like we could just keep going on so many great things and topics, and, thank you so much for joining me today to have this conversation. I'm so happy we connected. I wanna connect again for sure and expand on some of these things, but for you listeners out there, if you're interested in getting some of that story in your head out in whatever capacity, make sure to check the show notes. Go check out what Caroline's doing at forwardmotionwriting.com and see if her services might be right for you. And maybe they aren't right now, but maybe down the line, just know that it's out there, it exists, and she is around to help you get all that out and share this wonderful story that I know we all have our own, and sometimes it's hard to get out of our own way to tell it. So, thank you all out there for listening, and thank you again so much, Caroline, for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Taryn. I had such a great time too.
Awesome. All right. Bye, everybody.